Tonight we are live from Rotterdam, Nairobi and from site in the bush near Fort Rixon, Zimbabwe via live satellite video link. Welcome to StockBox Premiere. Well, thank you very much everyone for joining us today for our live discussion tonight. Joining us on the panel, our guests are Jason Brewer, the CEO of Marula Mining, that's the ticker MRAU, where we'll be talking about their battery metal projects in Tanzania. Cedric Simone, the CEO of Altona Rare Earths, that is the ticker ANR, but soon to become REE, as in rare earth element, when they move over to the main market. We'll be talking about their Monte Mwambe rare earth project in Mozambique. And George Roach, the CEO of Premier African Minerals, of course the hashtag there, or the ticker PREM, talking to us about the Zulu lithium project, where hot commission of the pilot plant to process spodumene concentrate is due to happen imminently. The format is to begin with the standard 10 to 15 minute interview, followed by the open Q&A session for 15 minutes. And this is your chance to put your questions to the director speaking. Using the live chat, if you like, we have received a lot of questions beforehand, particularly for one or two of the companies on tonight, but please do join in the live chat over on YouTube or hashtag StockBox Premiere over on Twitter. And please also hit that like or subscribe button if you are enjoying the show this evening. As always, the directors are bound by market rules, but they will do their best to answer your questions as they can. So to kick us off tonight, let's welcome our first guest. That's Jason Brewer, the CEO of Marula Mining. Good evening, Jason. Welcome back onto StockBox Premiere. How are you? I'm
very well, Mark, and it's a pleasure to be back on here. Thank you.
It's very good to be talking to you. Of course, the last time you were on, we were focusing on Blesberg. But today, I'm sure we'll cover questions on Blesberg, but really the focus is on the battery metals projects in Tanzania. As I understand, there are two of these. So there's two graphite projects. That's the Bagamoyo and the Nai Orinyori, and of course the Kanusi copper project. So you've really got three projects here. So just the first question to get us going, Jason, just thinking on the recent focus being on Blesberg. However, the company has several outstanding opportunities in Tanzania. So first of all, why Tanzania? And can you give a high-level overview of these projects?
Sure. And look, to be clear, Blesberg is rightly at the top of our list of our focus. And we're busy there on site with our retreatment of the stockpiles, looking at increasing the production profile there, increasing recoveries, and also looking at producing an even higher value product as opposed to just a straight DSO. So Blesberg still remains firmly there, don't get me wrong, and we can obviously answer questions on that. But yes, Tanzania, where I was only on site barely 2 weeks ago, very much a lot of activity there. Tanzania, a very well-established mining jurisdiction, as everybody knows, a lot of focus on the gold around Lake Victoria, but a country which, particularly under the new president now, has really started to attract some significant call it reinvestment back into the country. A proven mining jurisdiction, great infrastructure, and great support services, and a very well-educated and capable mining jurisdiction. So we've got the three projects. Kanusi, as you know, which is the copper, very high-grade copper, and where we've already announced that we're looking at getting that into production in the second half of this year. I was there on site, a series of veins into the hill, cross-cutting the hill, exposures extending over 1 kilometer in length, mineralization there, the high-grade copper mineralization, 3 to 5 meters in places, so very extensive. And where our sampling of those faces is already coming up between 9 and 30% copper. So you've got some very high-grade mineralization there. And where we've already got small-scale mining of that, and where we're already planning the processing plant, the site the mine site establishment works, as opposed to an exploration camp to be established there. So very much pushing ahead at Kanusi. Graphite is probably following in the footsteps of lithium as the next big commodity, which has got insatiable demand, great pricing, and a great outlook. We've got the two projects, Bagamoyo, which is on the coast, where we've got 22 granted mining licenses, and where that first phase exploration work has already been completed, and where Geofields, a local geoscience group out of Dar es Salaam, has presented their report, and we'll be looking at getting an announcement out imminently on their findings, which effectively support our focus on that project. So great project indeed. Nyori Nyori is the most recent graphite project located in Moshi, literally an hour and a half's drive here from Nairobi. So I'll be heading up there early next week, and where there's already small scale mining, where the Chinese over the past 3 months have started building a very extensive plant just on the adjacent licenses, and where there's some very large jumbo, super jumbo flakes, which we've already identified. So an exciting project, and that's crept up the pecking order in terms of the projects we're going to be looking at, Mark.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for summarising those for us, Jason. Now, we've discussed Blesberg many times before, and we've discussed following the Blesberg model on these copper and graphite projects that have the similar potential, as you've said before, to early scale production. So can you advise on the process for bringing these projects into production? Is it a matter of replicating what you've done at Blesberg?
Very much. Look, the mining licenses that we have in Tanzania, and all 3 projects have granted mining licenses. So that immediately allows us to move into a production scenario. So we're in a very advantageous position there. At Kanusi, we have 10 licenses, mining licenses, and at Bagamoyo and Nyori Nyori, we have a combined 32 mining licenses. So quite an extensive landholder. At Kanusi, it's a very straightforward process we have there. We've already defined a significant portion of mineralization, which we will be focused on our small scale startup operations. Like I say, early in the second half of this year. Our contractors out of South Africa, SMP, have already been doing a plant design to allow us to produce a 30% DSO product, which is readily exportable in the current markets, and great demand for that product. We will be focused there on a very simple open cast operation, feeding into a plant. Excavator, load haul, and simple beneficiation there. We've been in discussions with a number of global trading companies based in Europe and obviously Chinese counterparties. And we hope that over the coming weeks, we'll be announcing an offtake arrangement for that in the short term. So Kanusi very much moving ahead. But whilst we're doing that, there'll be an ongoing exploration to really prove up what we think are quite significant resources there. At a Bagamoyo and Nyori Nyori, it's probably Nyori Nyori, which is the one from a graphite perspective where we're going to be pushing ahead with that. We've got very shallow mineralization, strike lengths which are open and have been defined at surface by recent mapping work, which we'll be confirming. And where through trenching and very shallow drilling, we'll be proving up a significant JORC compliant resource in the short term. But we'll also be looking at the small scale mining work, which is already ongoing across those licenses, and where there is an opportunity, I guess, to basically increase those small scale activities to look to sell a product which is already being purchased there in Tanzania by local Chinese groups and other groups. So it's a fast track project which is aided by the people we work with, our local partners, and the fact that we're already operating on granted mining licenses too.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Now, as I understand, all these projects have ongoing exploration. Could you give a snapshot of some of the recent exploration that's been going on site?
Yeah, look, at Bagamoyo, we've just had Geofields, that Tanzanian group I've been referring to. They've finished their work. They did a very extensive mapping, sampling program. We've got a full database which has now been presented to us. We've got assays which are going to South Africa for analysis there. We've got visual understandings or estimations on the graphite content there in the mineralization, which is at surface and at shallow depths as well. So that the results of those assays will very clearly define our next phase of work, which is effectively a drill program there, further trenching and drilling to be carried out. We're benefited, I guess. The topography is very good out in the coastal region there around Tanga and so on. So we will mobilize drills very quickly to do that initial phase of work. That work is going to continue and extend across Nyori Nyori. There is samples which have already been taken, which are being sent to the assay labs as well. And from that, we're expecting some very, very positive results there. We've also identified where all the existing outcrops and existing small pits are, so it really allows us to be focused. At Canusi, whilst we're doing the small scale open cast mining operations, there is a drill program which we've got already mapped out. There's work which is going to commence next week on some of the access roads, drill pads, etc., to allow us to really move ahead with that. We've got geofields on site in 10 days, and they'll be doing further mapping. We've really only focused on 3 of the licenses out of the 10, which is where the initial mining work is going to focus. There's an additional 7 granted mining licenses where we will then map a number of those additional surface exposures and high grade and shallow copper exposures.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, just talking on Canusi there, and of course following the developments at the copper project, it looks like you've had some serious grades recently, and of course you've been very active on social media tweets with this. So clearly you're very confident in the prospects of this particular project. Yeah,
look, the mineralization, you can see it. You know, you can see the veins there. You can see you've got very high grade azurite, malachite, and cuprite there. So you can actually see this copper mineralization. Before Takela were involved in this operation, the local small-scale artisanal miners were actually, this is crazy, they were burning the copper ore with coal and with the graphite to bind it together to actually produce a copper ingot. And I think I've also posted pictures of where we've gone to where they were doing that work, and we've found small pieces of copper ingot, which they've been producing. So exceptionally high grade, which you can see, which you can sample very quickly on site with an XRF. And through that, that's where we've got our grades 10, 15, up to 30%. But we've obviously sent a lot of those samples to the labs for full assays because we want to better understand the metallurgy, the mineralogy, because that's obviously going to assist us in the long term. So Canusi, amazing. Yes, everybody's seen the pictures we've posted there. I think there's a lot more to come from there. And I think the next couple of months will really start to demonstrate the potential that exists there for us.
Excellent. We can keep an eye out over the next couple of months then. I mean, obviously all this will cost money. What is the exploration budgets that you have in place for these projects?
Yeah, as our investors and potential new investors would know, we completed a deal with a group out of South Africa called Q Global Commodities, heading up by Quinton van der Berg, a very successful mining entrepreneur, businessman in South Africa. We've agreed a financing with him whereby there's a series of tranches of fundings of approximately $1 million, 5 of those tranches coming in, which fully funds the exploration. The initial phase of work at Blesberg, the initial drilling program there, so there's $1 million which has been allocated towards that, and our drill program's in place for that. There's $1 million as well that's been allocated towards Canusi, and that's going to extend just beyond the drilling programs, but across some of the initial mining work and across some of the ongoing sampling work which is there. And then on the graphite, both Bagamoyo and for Nyori, again, there's another $1 million that we've earmarked for that. I actually don't think we're going to spend that much on those projects on the exploration because it's very shallow. You can see that mineralization at surface. So I think a lot of that work is going to be more on the study work to focus on the initial production profiles, plant, metallurgical samples, etc. So yeah, we're fully funded. We've got a $3 million exploration program across those 3 projects, 4 projects, I should say, sorry. And we're very confident that that's going to take us through to some well-defined JORC compliant resources.
Excellent. Well, it's very good to hear, Jason. Thank you very much for presenting all of that for us in bang on time here at 1:15. So let's go to the floor. Now, I do have a few questions that were submitted beforehand, but please, anyone watching who would like a question put to Jason, just type it away there in the YouTube live chat and we'll pick that up. But the first question I have, Jason, for you, does Marula have enough boots on the ground to manage all these exploration programs running concurrently?
Yeah, look, we've already got quite a significant team there in South Africa at Blesberg, and you know, both from the mining perspective, and look, we're using a number of consultants in South Africa. South Africa's, as everybody knows, a first world mining jurisdiction, so you're not short of consultants, geological consultants, mining consultants, and the various service companies there. So South Africa, very confident in our abilities there, and we're in the process of finalizing the appointment of a number of senior management to strengthen our team in Southern Africa, I should say, because obviously it's not just South Africa now. Up here, I guess in East Africa, across Kenya and Tanzania, again, further appointments to be made, but certainly at Bagamoyo and Nyori on the graphite, a very good team there, which are pushing ahead on those exploration programs, and a strong partner, certainly at Bagamoyo in Kusini Gateway. At Kanusi, we are located close to the town of Kanusi. We've already started employing quite a few of the local community, upskilling them in terms of working with heavy machinery and so on. They'll be working within the plant and doing some of that initial field work as well, so supporting our geologists. So do we have the team? Do we have the skill sets to do it? Yes, I think we do, but we're constantly expanding this team to support us, and further announcements in coming days, coming weeks will reinforce how much we are focused on ensuring we've got the skills.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So the next question I have that was submitted is regarding the moving to AIM. So what is the latest with the migration to AIM, and any anticipated costs with such a move?
Yeah, AIM's proceeding very well. All key appointments are made, and there's an RNS that we'll be releasing to give the update to everybody on exactly who the various consultants are across the legal aspects, the competent persons, the technical aspects, accountancy, and so on. So all of them are in place. They're doing their work. We're having regular all-party meetings, and we're pushing ahead with that. The timetable, in terms of that, we were aiming to get it done, obviously, at the end of this quarter. That ain't happening. We're looking at early to mid-May by the time we'll be trading there on the AIM market. So cost-wise, yes, it's an expensive exercise using lawyers, accountants in London, using technical consultants in South Africa and elsewhere here in Africa to confirm the technical merits, to confirm the legal merits. Yes, that's a $300,000-$400,000 exercise, but I'm very which is funded. We've already got the funding in place to cover that. But I believe that the increased liquidity, exposure, and the confidence that it gives to our shareholders and new investors of being on the AIM market, we will get that back tenfold just by trading on the AIM market.
Excellent. Well, it's good to hear that's costed, and it always does take a lot longer than everyone hopes to, these kind of moves, but it'll happen when it happens. Now, I have the next question is on Zimbabwe. Can you expand on the rationale behind establishing operations in Zimbabwe? And again, they will be are they funded as well?
Look, I think we've got another guest on here who can tell you just how good Zimbabwe is as a jurisdiction to operate. George has been there for some years, and the progress they've made at their Zulu mine is fantastic to see, and it really demonstrates what a good mining jurisdiction it is. So Zimbabwe, it's got some of the most significant lithium resources in Africa. It's also, again, a well-proven, well-established mining jurisdiction. And given our focus in South Africa, it makes sense to get involved in Zimbabwe. We like the geology. We know the operating environment. I'll be there in 3 weeks with our new COO and with the team on the ground. So Zimbabwe is a country which I think we should be operating in, and lends itself towards our strategy, because there is a lot of small-scale operations which have been established, which require capital. Because Zimbabwe has, as everybody knows, been starved from capital because of political issues in past years. Now it's open. There's significant inflows of capital from China, and I think we should be involved in some of those projects. In terms of funding our exploration activities and development activities there, yes, we have that well and truly in hand. And we obviously have the big balance sheet and financial support of one of our major new shareholders in terms of QGC Commodities to support us in those activities as well.
Excellent, thank you. Well, of course, I knew there would be questions on Blesberg. Can you update about on-site activities and the processing at Blesberg?
Yes, look, at Blesberg, the key thing there is getting the best value out of Blesberg. And we're initially starting on the reprocessing of the dumps, of the stockpiles, which have come about from previous tantalum mining operations. So there's 250 to 400,000 tons of those stockpiles, which contain spodumene. Spodumene, which we've assayed, and that ranges from 3% to 7.8%. And we've recently done a number of assays there to confirm that. Our consultants, our mining and processing contractors there, SMP, they have been looking at optimizing that production profile and optimizing the processing and increasing the processing. But more importantly, we're looking at the final product that we're producing. At the moment, we have an arrangement to produce and sell 2,000 tons of a DSO product at a minimum grade of about 5%. The assay work that would be completed has demonstrated that the average grade is going to be well above that. What we've got to do is basically get that product in a format that allows us to do a more representative sample. At the moment, as people have seen from the assay, from the images and videos that we've put out, it's very much a bulk product there. We need to crush that more finely so that the assay work, which is being completed, now is more representative of the first 1,000 tons and then the second 1,000 tons. So a lot of the work is focused on that. Our team have been in SMP, have been in Kimberley today at EROS Mining Engineering's plants site, looking at an optical sorter, which will effectively allow us to more than double the production profile there and increase recovery significantly as well. So we're looking at that work. And on the final product work, instead of producing a straightforward DSO product, which we're very capable of doing and have already demonstrated we can, we're looking at the additional higher value products which we can do. And there is a pilot plant facility which SMP have in Johannesburg, and we're fast looking at the final products that come from that. So we will be looking at updating the market on that. And I think that's some quite exciting news as to the final product, the quality and the pricing that product attracts in the market.
Okay, excellent. That's a good comprehensive update. It covers a few questions that were put to me beforehand with that update, Jason. I can see one has popped up there. Can you say more about the projects in Zimbabwe? Oh, we've already had that question. I saw that. I asked that question earlier.
Look, Mark, there's multiple projects we've been looking at. We've been doing a lot of work at. We've kind of, with the AIM listing, if we were to have done those deals last week, or when we announced that we'd already had the subsidiary in there, that would have required additional competent persons reports to be completed and additional legal work to be completed. The decision's been taken to kind of do them post-AIM, because that way the deals we present as normal, straightforward acquisitions, and we don't have to do the initial CPR and other work associated with that beforehand. So we're there, we're on the ground, we have a team there, we've identified opportunities. At this stage, we're still finalizing negotiations on them. We hope to conclude them, obviously, but at this stage, we can't put out any further information on them. Needless to say, they're damn good projects.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's see if any other questions have come in on YouTube. Revenue from Blesberg, do we expect more to come in the short term? And that does tie, someone did ask me earlier about, you mentioned there about doubling delivery actually as well. And so this is kind of a similar question.
Yeah, look, we've announced the terms of the prepayment transaction, which we entered into, which kind of gives you a valuation on the DSO sales potential there. To us, that's not getting the best out of that asset. Hence why we've been doing the additional test work and additional work with SMP in Joburg in terms of upgrading that product from just a straightforward spodumene, similar to a 5-6% product, which most hard rock lithium mines around the world are producing, to actually be producing a product which goes far over and beyond what any other junior mid-tier mining company is even looking at doing now. So that has the potential to have a very marked impact on revenue and earnings out of the production of lithium from Blesberg.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
I had to be careful what I said there, I think.
Yeah, you always have to be a bit careful. Now, the Blesberg assay results have been outstanding for some time. This is another question I was sent in advance as well. So are the same labs being used for the assay assessments for Bagamoyo and Kanusi? And at the same time, Jason, can you give an update on those assays if you can? Yeah,
look, I mean, no, we're using different labs, and it's a completely different way of assaying the metallurgy there. Both copper, very different from the lithium, very different from the graphite. So different labs going to... we were looking at some of the labs in Tanzania, up at Mwanza, and South Africa. The stuff from Bagamoyo is heading down to South Africa, for instance. So we're using different labs, and purposefully, because different labs have different strengths and different turnaround times. That's the key thing for us. So Blesberg, like I said, we've had assay work which is being completed. We will be announcing the results of those assays in conjunction with a more broader update on the Blesberg project, and basically reinforcing what I've just been talking about here in terms of how we're optimizing that operation and how we will be generating or producing a much higher value product with additional revenue streams on the back of it, not just that DSO product, which is a well, it's not necessarily low value when you're getting anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5,000 a ton, but there is additional products we can produce out of Blesberg, which provides significantly increased earnings on the back of that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So let's see if any other questions. Yeah, okay. Any news on the Nairobi listing?
That's straight after AIM. Straight after AIM. Basically, the listing document for Nairobi is 90% identical to what we're going to have for AIM. So we have to translate the financials from British pounds to Kenyan shillings. There's a bit of change in format, but literally it's I won't say a cut and paste, but we'll be using 90% of the work for the AIM just flows straight through to that Nairobi listing, and we're getting a lot of pressure to get that done.
Indeed. Okay.
Particularly here in Nairobi.
Indeed. Well, it's good to hear it'll come shortly after the AIM listing there. So I think there's another question. Here we go. There is a major Chinese investor for Prem Zulu Lithium. Has there been any Chinese interest in Blesberg Lithium?
There's interest from numerous parties in what we're doing on the lithium. Multiples there. Yes, a lot of Chinese interest.
Okay. There's a lot of Chinese interest in Africa. I think they will own Africa one day.
Full stop. But it's not just the Chinese. You're now getting a lot of those European trading groups as well that are now setting up lithium desks, trading lithium. I mean, when I went through to Joburg just last time, I went into the Trafigura office, which is literally just down from QGC's office there in Santon. And we were talking about the copper. They've now got a lithium desk, and they never had that before. And that's no different to a lot of those other well-established European trading houses that have now recognized there is significant earnings in trading these battery metals, which previously there wasn't the ability to do so. So Chinese interest, European interest, even interest here within Africa as well. So yes.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I have a couple more that were just sent to me. We've got, I know that one's, well, let me ask you that one. How high can you see the lithium price in the future? Where's your crystal ball, Jason?
Yes, I just rub it. Is that how you do that? No, look, I mean, for most people that are operating in Africa, the cost base is significantly below a number of those lithium companies which are looking at producing in the likes of Eastern Europe, the Czech Republic, Austria, Germany, etc. So I tend not to look at the lithium price. Just drives sentiment into the market and sentiment for lithium stocks and so on. So where's the lithium price going to go? It goes where it goes. All I know is we're going to make significant margins on our production profile, given our cost base, given the efficiency of our operations, the people we've got within the team, and the final product we're producing.
Okay. We'll have a couple of other questions. Drilling at both Blesberg and Canusi, when will it take place, do you know?
We're looking early in the next quarter, so April for Blesberg, and probably a similar time, perhaps a bit late in April, May for Canusi.
Okay, excellent. And what will it take to bring Canusi into production, time and money-wise?
The small scale operations, look, we've not released detailed numbers or anything like that. We've just been looking and talking about a small plant at the moment with our consultants. We can be doing as I mentioned earlier, a DSO product there, potentially, and again, please don't hold me guys on this, but August, September, we'll have first production.
Okay. And a final question that was sent to me earlier. Do you see continuous sales of the stockpile of lithium spodumene carrying on all year? Or will there be some time out collecting and putting together the stockpiles into those 1,000 ton bags? I.e., will the 2.5 million sales be more ad hoc or very regular?
No, I think we'll be looking at getting those deliveries there done as quickly as possible, and then focusing on the production of a different product.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Jason, for your time. We are bang on time. We will go straight to our next guest, but thank you very much, Jason. You can stick around till the end and have the roundtable discussion on battery metals and mining in Africa. But for
Fantastic.
now, thank you very much. So what I'd like to do now is bring in our second guest. That is Cedric Simonet, the CEO of Altona Rare Earths. It's good to be talking to you, Cedric. How are you doing? Actually, we can't hear you, Cedric.
All right.
There you go. Now we've got you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Let me just correct something. I'm not the CEO of Altona. I'm the Chief Operating Officer.
Okay, my apologies. The Chief
That may
Operating
change one
Officer.
day, but for now I'm the Chief Operating Officer.
Okay. The COO of Altona Rare. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, we're going to be focusing on the Monte Moambe project, and that is, from your website, a world-class carbonatite-hosted rare earth project in Mozambique. But before we discuss the flagship asset, could you update investors on the imminent listing of the main segment of the London Stock Exchange?
Of course. Well, it's going very, very well. It has taken some time, admittedly, but the admission process is in its final stage. We are busy updating a few minor things on the prospectus based on the latest FCA comments. We've done a placing, which was successfully completed and significantly oversubscribed. We were looking for 1.25 million pounds to cover our working capital requirements as part of the listing process. And we managed to raise 2 million pounds, which was excellent, thanks to our broker, Optiva Securities. Altona has ceased trading on Aquis on Friday evening as part of the process. And we are looking forward to complete our admission on the LSE next week with a new ticker, which will be REE, as you mentioned.
Excellent. That's good to hear. It's been a while coming, talking to Christian Taylor Wilkinson. This has been a long while coming, so it's good to hear that is going to happen. Now then, let's talk about Monte Moambe then. So for the benefit of any new investors here, or even existing investors, could you provide a high-level overview of the project?
All right. So Monte Moambe is a carbonatite-hosted rare earth deposit province in northwest Mozambique. That's near the border with Malawi and with Zambia and also Zimbabwe. So when you talk about rare earth elements, it's actually 17 different elements, and each has got its own characteristics, its own use, its own price. So when you look at Monte Moambe, it's what we call a light rare earth element deposit. The most important elements are neodymium, praseodymium, terbium, and dysprosium. We have all these elements at Monte Moambe. They are also called the magnet metals because they are used to make permanent magnets, which are essential to produce wind turbines and electric vehicles. So most of the value at Monte Moambe is contained in these four elements. Tet province is a very safe and mature mining region. We have 4 operating coal mines within a radius of 50 kilometers around of Monte Moambe. There is a large iron and steel project. There are gold mines. There is infrastructure. There is access to energy. There are equipment suppliers, services suppliers. It's a real mining region. So it's a very good location. We secured this project back in June 2021. So that site, Monte Moambe, had seen some exploration back between 2010 and 2012. That was exploration for another mineral, fluorspar. But in the course of this exploration, the company that was working there found some rare earth occurrences. And these rare earth occurrences were quite interesting because the grades were high, above 3% total rare earth oxide. For those who don't know, TREO, total rare earth oxide, that's the sum of all rare earth elements contained in the rock. So that's a metric of the total grade. And the length of the intercept in the drill holes was also very interesting. It was ranging from 20 meters up to 60 meters. So we thought that this project had a lot of potential. We went for it, and the work we have done since has proved us completely right about the potential.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Now, despite the I wouldn't say corporate challenges, but of course the illiquidity on Aquis, and of course the wanting to move over onto the main market that's been going on for a number of years. Despite all of this, you have successfully conducted extensive exploration on the project, haven't you, including multiple drill campaigns. So could you give an update on the overall exploration that's been done by Altona on the project to date?
All right. Yes, you are right. The first thing, the challenges were mostly on the corporate side, having to do with our move from Aquis to the LSE. There is no direct system to move from one exchange to the other. And when you prepare a prospectus, and at the same time you are on a listed stock exchange, which is Aquis, and you have to publish information on what you do, then you have to change your prospectus all the time, and that's kind of a vicious circle which caused the delays that we had until now. But that has been sorted, as I said. And despite this, as far as exploration is concerned, we were able to achieve a lot with limited resources. So one interesting way we used to achieve this is that very early in the exploration phase, we procured a portable XRF, but a special model, which was able to analyze some of the rare earth elements. That's a very useful tool, but XRFs, you have to be very careful, especially with rare earths, because if you don't control what you're doing, you can make errors and you can get wrong results. So we took the time to set up a very solid QA/QC system. We have a database of over 1,000 samples, which were assayed both with the XRF and at the laboratory. So we have a very good confidence in our results. And what happens is that if I drill a hole today, tomorrow, almost in real time, I'm going to have preliminary results from the XRF. So I'm able to decide if we need to stop this hole, if we need to continue this hole, where we need to drill the next hole. Of course, the samples are then sent to the laboratory so that we have certified results for our resource estimate. So we are able this way to save a lot of time and a lot of money. We have done a soil sampling survey over the whole carbonatite that has enabled us to discover over 10 targets for rare earths and niobium. And we have drilled so far over 7,000 meters, mostly on 2 targets, which we call target 1 and target 4. And our drilling success rate is extremely high. About 60%, over 60% of the meterage drilled this year was in rare earth ore. So last year in July, we were able to publish an exploration target estimate. For those who are not familiar with exploration targets, it's an estimate which you do when you don't have enough data yet to do a proper mineral resource estimate. So it gives you an indication of potential, and it's also very useful to validate your drilling plan. That exploration target came up with a figure of between 20 million and 50 million tons at 1.6 to 1.8% TREO, which was quite interesting. But the most interesting part is that inside this volume, there were high-grade zones, very well-defined high-grade zones. And the tonnage for this high-grade zone ranged from 6 million tons to 11 million tons, with grades between 2.4 and 2.5% TREO, which is very decent. So what we did is that after we published the exploration targets, we continued drilling, focusing on these high-grade zones. So our mineral resource estimate is currently being worked on. We are expecting to publish it in the second quarter of this year. And we are expecting something around 20 million tons at 2.5%, which is very close to the sort of reserve statements in terms of size and in terms of grade that some of our peers have. So it's very, very encouraging.
Well, thank you for that. That's a very comprehensive overview of what you've been doing. I mean, that's a lot of drilling, 7,000 meters there. You identified those high-grade zones. It's nice to hear that the MRE is underway. And you said, was that the end of, or during quarter 2?
During Q2, yes.
During Q2. I mean, if you were to sort of say at the moment what stage in a timeline the project is at, are we past early stage? Are we on to slightly more advanced stages now with this project and the exploration?
Right. We are still at an early stage in the sense that we have not yet published our MRE, our mineral resource estimate. The deliverables that we will have for 2023 include the mineral resource estimate, the scoping study, which we are doing at the same time. Once we have these two deliverables, we'll have a good picture of the project and its potential viability, and that's when we will be a little bit more advanced. Another important deliverable is that once we complete the scoping study, we will be able to, we have an earn-in agreement on this project. So our ownership of the project will shift from 20%, which is the current figure, to 51%. We will also be able to start pre-feasibility study activities, and we will also put in a mining concession application. In Mozambique, the government tends to issue mining licenses relatively early in the life of the project. So it's something we intend to take advantage of to de-risk further the project. So all this is going to be done in 2023, and that is going to translate in very exciting news flow.
Yes, indeed, that's a lot of key milestones there. So really, is it fair to say that that is the focus of the company? I'm not going to say IPO, but once you're onto the main market there, I mean, what are the sort of smaller activities you'll be doing to get to these milestones?
Yeah, what we will be doing as far as the MRE and scoping study is concerned, it's mostly desktop work. All the field work has been done. The samples are at the lab. Most of them have been assayed. We are hiring Snowden Optiro to do these studies. So it's all desktop work. As far as the PFS activities is concerned, we are going to start with some baseline studies, which are very important. That's what you need to start with because they have to be done on some long period of time. We are looking at two things. One is environmental baseline studies, obviously. And we are going to look also at weather studies. We are going to set up an automated weather station. The reason is that we believe there is a lot of potential at Monte Muambe to use green energy for the mining operations, as opposed to diesel generators, for example. First, most of the energy available in TET is from hydropower from the Carorabassa Dam, which is located in Mozambique. And we think that the Monte Muambe site is very favorable to generate electricity through solar plant on site, and possibly also through wind turbines. So this is something very important we want to look at also. We are also going to do some drilling. There is some exploration we need to continue to do at the same time. So we want to continue some exploration on target 4, and then we have target 9. And as I said, we have identified over 10 targets. So we all have to review them one by one.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. I've made notes of that, and I'll be following up with you as we go through the year, and making sure you've done what you said you were going to do. Before we go to the live questions here, just a final question. You've only got the one project really. That's your main focus. Do you plan to make further acquisitions potentially?
We are in a very good position. We have a lot of presence in Africa. We've got network. We've got extensive knowledge about the geology of this continent. So we are in a very good position to identify and secure new projects. We have recently discovered ionic clay targets. I will not say a lot about this, but we are moving to secure these deposits. These are new discoveries. So the answer to your question is yes. Although we focus on Monte Muambe because this is the asset we have and it's an excellent asset, we will take advantage of our good position in Africa to see if we can secure more rare earth projects.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'll now go to the questions, and we have had a couple submitted so far. Anyone who has any questions, just as before, just please put them there in the YouTube live chat and we'll pick them up. I can see there's nearly 200 people watching, which is fantastic. It's actually the best live stream we've ever done. So thank you everyone for joining. So first of all, Cedric, the market cap of Altona is significantly lower than the peers out there, so Macango and of course Rainbow Rare Earths. What is the strategy to add significant shareholder value? Of course, the move over to main should help with liquidity, at least a little bit, I'd have thought.
All right. So as we said, Altona has made tremendous progress with Monte Muambe over the past 18 months. but the news flow that came out of this has not been rewarded on the share price. And we believe this is partly due to Aquis not being the most suitable exchange for us. And we believe that our move to the London Stock Exchange is going to unlock a lot of value of our project and our strategy for our shareholders. So we are expecting to see now the rewards of the work we are doing on the share price. As far as the Montemoambe project itself is concerned, the key for us is to try to fast track the project, and we know how to do this. We have a very focused and well-defined strategy. When we compare our peers' reserve statements with our exploration targets and with the results of the modeling we've done internally, we have seen that our project has the right size and grade for development. Most projects, carbonatite rare earth projects in Africa and in Australia, you're looking at reserves of between 10 and 30 million tons. As I said, we are expecting to be somewhere around 20 million tons with a grade which is good. So we are somewhere in the sweet spot. So what we are going to do now is we are going to focus our drilling activities and our metallurgical studies on these high-grade zones to strengthen the case for this project. We are not going to spend years and millions of pounds of resources to drill and create huge number of hundreds of millions of tons when we know that we will never mine these hundreds of millions of tons. We are very, very focused, and we think that by being focused like this, we will be able to achieve in just a few years what took to others a much longer time to do.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's certainly not a lot of opportunity to invest in rare earth companies, certainly in London anyway. So it's nice to see you there, nice and established. Is the company fully funded for all these exploration and activities for 2023?
Right, so we are fully funded to achieve the 2023 deliverables that I have mentioned previously. Finish the MRE, the scoping study, get to 51%, get some work started on the PFS, and get the mining concession. However, if we want to advance the PFS along an aggressive timeline, which is the one we have set, we will need to raise more funds later in the year. And we'll do this at a time where the share price has gone up, obviously, once we are admitted on the LSE. Just before last week, we saw the share price starting to move up and up, which shows the interest of the investors. And we think this movement is going to continue once we get onto the LSE. And sometime later during this year, we will start looking at raising funds to be able to complete now the PFS.
Okay, thank you. And is it the intention of the company to take Montemoambe all the way to production?
Yeah, this is a possibility we are looking at very seriously. Because this would be the best way to create as much value as possible for both our shareholders and also stakeholders. The scoping study is going to give us a better picture of the project's potential viability, but so far it looks very favorable. When you look at the location, which is a good location in a mining region, when you look at the fact that nobody lives within the area of the license, there is no relocation involved. So far, we have not identified any big environmental sensitivity. Then when you look at the mining parameters, when you look at the geometry of the ore bodies, which is favorable to open pits, and the consistency and the grade of the ore bodies, it all looks excellent. And I am speaking from experience. I've been a mine manager before, so I know exactly when I see the configuration at Montemoambe, I see a potential mining project. So the short answer to your question is yes, definitely we are looking at putting Montemoambe into production. How that will be done, with what sort of partnerships, maybe with other players, we will see that later, but we are very seriously looking at it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Now, we have talked about the recent drilling results, and you've mentioned the high grade results there from surface in many cases. How does this compare to similar projects in Africa? Do you got some comparisons to give us? Yeah,
of course. So as I said, we think the MRE is going to come somewhere around 20 million tons at 2.5% TREO or more, considering just target 1 and 4. And I've said we have got more targets, so potentially some upscale in terms of tonnage. This size and grade is not very different from Pensana's reserve statement for Longojo, which is about 30 million tons at 2.6%. Also, it's not very far in terms of tonnage from Congo's reserve statement for Songwe, which is about 18 million tons, although their grade is much lower than ours. So, okay, with rare earths, you have to be careful because no two projects are identical. Every project is different, so it's very hard to compare. And the tonnage and the grades are not the only parameters. You've got the metallurgy, you've got mining parameters, commercial parameters, etc. But so far as the size and the grades are concerned, Monte Muambe compares very favorably to our peers.
Okay, excellent. Well, I can see that there are some questions that have come in as we've been talking, so if we can have some of them coming up. Cedric, do you have a background in rare earth element exploring and mining?
Yes, I've been involved with several projects in Kenya. I was involved in exploration on Marima Hill, which is a very significant world-class project, which was at the time operated by Pacific Wildcats. So I was working there as a contractor, and I've been working also on several carbonatite projects in Western Kenya, called Buru Hill, called Homa Mountain. And since I've been with Altona I started around 2020, we've done a hell of a lot of project reviews, due diligences, project assessments. So we've worked on a lot of things, both carbonatite projects and ionic clay projects. So yes, I do have a lot of experience in rare earths. I actually qualify as a competent person on rare earth projects.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. So there are some more questions. How far ahead are peers like Rainbow? They have a market cap of over 50 million. So how far ahead are they in the sort of development curve?
Right. Rainbow, they've been working on different projects, so it's a little bit difficult to compare. If you compare to projects like Pensana, like Mpango, like Peak Resources, we are very much behind because we are just starting. Remember, 2 years ago, these were just a few rare earth occurrences which had been identified. And with the work we are doing, we are fast tracking the project. We are trying to catch up on our peers. So it's a very good thing you mentioned the market cap, because when you look at our market cap and when you look at the characteristics of our projects that we can already see, you can see what is the potential, where our market cap can go and will go in a matter of a few years. So it's a very good observation.
Okay, thank you for that. So there are some more questions. Again, David, another question from David. If we look at further projects, are we looking at ones that can deliver short-term revenue?
Yeah, we are trying to look at that. Short-term revenue is always very welcome. Ionic clay projects and projects on hydrothermal deposits where you have coarse rare earth minerals which are easy to separate are very interesting, because theoretically they can be put in production faster than carbonatite projects, which are relatively bigger. So that's what we are trying to focus on. We don't need to have another Monte Muambe. We already have one. We are very happy with it. But if we can get a project with different characteristics, that we will look at.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So I can see there are definitely more questions there. Chris, how far is the cash recently raised likely to take Altona in terms of this year's plans? I mean, you've said that you're going to achieve all your milestones, aren't you, that you've set out earlier?
Yeah, I've already answered the question, actually. We are able to achieve the milestones I've talked about, the deliverables I've talked about. That's the mineral resource estimate, the scoping study, getting our ownership from 20% to 51%, getting some work started on the PFS, some baseline studies, also some drilling, and getting the mining concession, starting the process and hopefully completing it before the end of the year. Perfect.
Thank you. That's very clear. So there are more questions I can see there. So fellow Zaf, welcome. Are you still committed to provide rare earth elements for Europe over China?
Yes, we are. And hi, Zaf. Yes, we are. We were in Europe, Christian and I, recently. We went to Brussels. We had some chats with the European Union. We went to Lille, where there was a conference on critical minerals in Europe. So definitely, we want to try to supply rare earths to Europe. But one important thing for us is also that we want to try to do as much downstream development in country as possible in Mozambique, because the minerals are in Mozambique. Even if we want to send them to Europe, we would prefer not to send raw minerals to Europe. We would prefer to send semi-finished products.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I can see there's another question from Zaf there. Do you have any estimate of capex to develop the asset, having been a mine manager in the past, roughly?
Right. We don't have estimates yet for Monte Muambe, and there are lots of parameters involved. So I don't want to give you some estimates for Monte Muambe. What I can tell you is that similar sized projects, the capex is usually around $250 million.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So let's see if there are any more questions for you, Cedric. I did have another one that was sent to me, which I can ask if people are still typing, but it was in terms of the situation on the ground, in terms of exploration, accommodation, infrastructure. What's in place on the ground at Monte Muambe?
Right. So Monte Muambe is still at an early stage of exploration, so we don't have much there yet. We have, of course, an exploration camp. There are some buildings. There is a core shed, some storage, and we stay in tents, which is very, very nice. Our immediate project in terms of upgrading the camp is to build a sample preparation laboratory, which is going to be done under the supervision of a competent person who has experience in this. And that will enable us to send pulps to the lab instead of sending split RC cutting samples. The big advantage in doing this is that it will reduce our costs, our sample prep cost, but more importantly, it will reduce the time it takes to get back assay results from the laboratory. So that's what we have on site. Now, in terms of regional infrastructure, I've already talked a little bit about this, but I think it's important to give you some information on some things that are happening. Just next door to Monte Muambe, there is a coal license, and the owner of the coal license is going into development on this license. So they are going to build a road infrastructure to this license, which is going to come within 4 or 5 kilometers of our camp, which is excellent. So electricity is going to come, the road is going to come. That's something that are going to happen this year, well before we start the development of the mine. So in terms of infrastructure, in Tet province, we are very, very comfortable.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Cedric Simonet, for your time this evening. And I hope you can as well stick around for another half an hour to join the roundtable discussion.
I will.
Well, thank you very much. So I will actually probably go straight to our last guest, because I know there are a lot of people very keen to see this guy. So the more time we can have on this, the better. So let me bring in our last guest, George Roach, the CEO of Premier African Minerals, joining us live from site via satellite video link, which is a first for us on StockBox. It's very exciting, and there will be a slight delay, I'm told, with the back and forth, but just bear with us. But hello, George, welcome. How are you? And I'm not sure if your mic is on, George.
Let's try that again. Can you hear me this time?
Perfect.
It's good.
So how are you? I can see you've got your high-vis vest on, and I know we were talking before we came on air that you were hoping to do it actually outside around the plant, but it is pretty dark where you are, and the mosquitoes are probably very active.
Yeah, indeed, it is pretty dark at the plant. No, I would have done it from there, but but for limited internet connectivity from the site. But you know, where I am, at least we have decent connection. I have some electricity here, and as I say, great to be talking to you guys.
Well, it's great to have you on, George. Of course, the focus is going to be on Zulu Lithium, where the much anticipated pilot plant construction, plus all the other associated work on site that's required, is really taking shape. And judging from the social media, we can see all of that happening. Now, the Hot Commission, any day now. Now, what I want to do is get straight to the point. There are a lot of people who want to know the answer to this. So I'm going to ask you the question first of all. Where are you on the pilot plant and regarding the Hot Commission and getting into production? Can you say anything?
Sure. Look, I think let me start off by saying that I know we call it a pilot plant and we keep on referring to it as a pilot plant, but the anticipated ore feed into this plant will be around about 140 tons an hour. And we're sitting at the back end of it with a spodumene flotation setup that has a design capacity of 40 ton an hour of solids and an anticipated mass pull of 30%. So in principle, it's possible, subject to ore feed and various other things, that we could be sitting with as much as 12 ton an hour coming out of the spodumene flotation circuits. I don't know that we're going to achieve that immediately. I think there's going to be a bit of a ramp up on it. And obviously, because of the way we've gone about putting this plant together very, very rapidly, and because we bypassed a complete DFS, I'm not really in a position and am reluctant in any event to provide direct guidance on this. But the moment there is spodumene production, we'll be in a much, much better place to go back on some of those numbers I've been talking about and to be able to put spodumene to tonnages. And in that way, I think you confirm definitively why we've gone this route and the value in terms of going the way we have. I think that that's about as much as I can say at the moment. Maybe I can just add that the plant itself is complete in terms of all the major components, and I think this has been clear from some of the video feed that we've been providing. The front end of the plant, the entire crushing circuit, is in a state of power on. In terms of the flotation circuit, water is on to the plant. The final bumping and so on of various motors and various circuits and so on is all underway. We have first ore exposed in the pit. We are very comfortable with what we're seeing in terms of exposing the ore body. It looks better than we anticipated. The weathering is less than had been predicted in some instances. So generally speaking, in terms of where the plant is and how it's progressing, I'm very comfortable. I'm very, very pleased with it. We've been saying for some time that we anticipated first spodumene production in Q1. I know it's getting pretty close to the end of Q1 at the moment, but so is this plant getting pretty close to being able to produce. And to be quite frank, I think that right now there is every chance that we're going to hit what we've been saying we will hit, and that it is more likely than not that we will have first spodumene before the end of this quarter.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, George, because of course that was the plan, to get first spodumene before the end of the quarter. It's getting close, but it's good to hear that everything is in place, major components are in place, and other things have been connected. So let's wait and see then. That's all we can do, isn't it, for another week or two, I suppose?
Mark, yes. I'd like to be in a position early next week to provide a further update on that. We're working, I mean, all of us are working extremely hard at the moment. If I just think back that I might be sitting in nice office at the moment that's got a white wall behind me and some electricity. But where I am sitting was virgin bush in September last year. Where the plant has been constructed was bush. We broke ground late in September last year. And we've gone from that to where we are today. We've built, and I think I've said it in a couple of videos, that you build a mine here and you've got nothing. And if you're in Europe, you call for water and it arrives, and you call for electricity and somebody brings it to you. You kind of here, you do everything yourself, literally everything yourself. So I think that for us to have achieved what we have in the time frame is quite remarkable. I don't think many people believed it, and I don't even think many people on my own team believed that we were going to do it, but it is where we are.
Well, I was talking to your IT guy earlier, and he says really what you've got to do, you've got to make a whole village effectively in the middle of nowhere, and rapid progress indeed. I mean, how does your speed compare to like the industry standard? I mean, you're very impressed, I can tell, by the speed in which things have come together.
Generally speaking, the projections would have been 18 months to have done what we've done. That would be a norm for this. And even that might have been quite quick. So, I can't explain the pressures and so on that we've had, that we've put other contractors under. I don't think that anybody in this immediate vicinity of where we are quite believes what's happened. I know a lot of the local community, and we employ a huge number of the local community, have difficulty in coming to terms with what's happened. And there have been a lot of interesting spin-offs. I mean, one of them that I was talking to somebody about earlier today is that this community, for somebody to get to Bulawayo from this community a matter of a year ago, cost them $10 to get transport. Today it costs them $2 because they've got a decent road. They've got plenty of people coming here. The local storekeeper is delighted. He says that his turnover is increasing exponentially. Our projection on the mine is we'll have 200 people that we employ, and the mining contractor, probably going to have another 100 plus. So it's an absolute landmark within the environment that we're in, from a community and a country perspective.
Excellent. Well, of course, much of the energy is focused on the now, and I know it's difficult to get hold of you and indeed get a connection because you are very busy actually on site. But Zulu is definitely not a short-term play, is it? I mean, could you expand on the longevity of the project?
Mark, we have ongoing exploration programs. We're drilling again at the moment. We have exploration rigs running right now on extensions to this thing. These pegmatite ore bodies are incredibly complicated, and anybody who tries to simplify this and tries to sketch a plain coal seam like ore body is I don't think they're telling the whole truth. The more we work on them, the more we learn. And I sometimes think the more we learn, how little we actually knew a matter of a year ago or whenever. So we have a series of steeply dipping pegmatites. The main one, in fact, that we'll be targeting initially has a surface expression at the moment in some of the new trenching that we're opening up in excess of 20 meters. I mean, that's a beautiful expression right off surface. And the weathering that we are seeing is much shallower than had originally been projected. Some of my geos have been showing me stuff almost off surface that's very competent, that we could put straight into crushers. So that's where we are off surface, and that's in some of the areas that we're not even looking to mine right now. So from a long-term perspective, I think that Zulu has got some huge legs to go. And more particularly, that this main pegmatite is predominantly spodumene. When I say predominantly spodumene, the other mineral that it contains is lepidolite. We are not seeing any petalite within it. And our plant, as we have it set up at the moment, is set up to recover the microlipidolite mineralization and the spodumene mineralization. That's what we're about. So our plant is designed almost perfectly for the mineralization that we're seeing and the extent of the mineralization that we're seeing. And I believe in time, the extent of this resource is going to see Zulu producing for, I don't know. I don't know where the life of mine's going to go. It depends on how deep one's going to go, how deep you're going to mine. But I would say 12, 15, 20 years, I think this will still be around. I think it's got long legs and a long way to go.
Okay. Well, could you perhaps give us a sense of what it's like on the ground at the moment? I assume you have lots of people working there, engineers, people from start. What's the general feeling about if you're doing some little tests that are going on at the moment or getting things finished in a nice, timely fashion? Just give us a sense of the work activity and also the feeling amongst Prem staff.
Well, amongst Prem staff, I think the most significant feeling is frustration because we really wanted to be in production already. So there's an intense feeling of that. The Stark Resources and Enprotect people who are on site are under a hell of a lot of pressure from us. I'm putting mountains and mountains of pressure on them all to finalize this. I mean, the plant is all standing there. It really is. It's minor, relatively silly things that need final connection. For example, instrumentation on the flotation circuit, reagent connections to flotation cells. So the reagent plant stands there, the flotation plant stands there, but the final pump connection from a sulfuric acid dispenser to a preparation plant, that needs to be bolted together. It's little things like that. And these things are being tackled one by one and really put together and finished off as rapidly as possible. That's why I believe that with the pressure that we're putting on everybody and where we are in terms of it really being the finishing touches at the moment, that this target that I've set of producing before the end of Q1 is realistic from the plant perspective. There are one or two reagent issues that are being dealt with, the importation of some reagents. We've got trucks still sitting at the borders with some of the stuff, but it is all an absolute final stages at the moment.
Excellent. Well, thank you, George. I'm going to go to the questions. I've had a few submitted to me prior, but I can see there are nearly 400 people watching live, which is an absolute record for us here at StockBox. And I think it's all down to you, not me. So thank you very much, George, for bringing us all these people. I hope everyone's enjoying it. So the first question I have is, have there been any further conversations with Shuzoi on additional investment? And if so, what is the scope to achieve this? Equally, have any other companies shown further interest?
Well, there's strong interest from a number of other companies. Some strong direct approaches, and some, and I don't think this is a secret or shouldn't be a surprise or secret to anybody in this space and with this company at this point where it is. I would have been very surprised if there was not some other strong interest and strong direct approaches. In terms of Sushu's concern is only to get production. They have a history, and if you look at them, you'll see that they take positions in many companies. They've done it with some of the Australian companies. They've done it with various others. They take a minority position relatively early on with a view to securing some production. That's their objective. That's what they are concerned with. There are a lot, we only committed ourselves to production from the pilot plant and or 50% of our spodumene production. So there's a huge amount of interest from other people wanting the rest of it and wanting to talk to us. So yes, strong, lots of discussion.
Excellent. Okay. Now, are there any methods, are the methods of transport and all aspects of transporting the materials to Shuzhou arranged or set up on a long-term basis? So beyond just repaying the loan?
Yes, the logistics have had a lot of attention in terms of which way we're going to go. And I think in the context of logistics, one needs to understand that Zimbabwe is already in some instances and is becoming a very big exporter of spodumene. So at the moment, you've got Pakita exporting, I'm not quite sure, but a lot of spodumene. You've got the Arcadia guys who are just coming into production. You've got us. You've got some other direct run-of-mine material still going out. You've got Sabi Star coming into production fairly soon. And the concern has been that the logical ports are Beira, Mozambique, and Durban. And most of this at the moment requires truck movement. And it's going to take a hell of a lot of transport and a lot of management and handling of this. So we have taken time to identify several operators, road transport operators, who have the ability to stuff containers either in Beira or Maputo or in Johannesburg on the way to Durban. And we've identified these alternatives. They are costed, they are set up, and they are ready to go. So yes, we've taken a lot of care about that aspect of it, of getting it out of Zimbabwe and getting it to a port.
Okay. Now, is the DFS still based on 100,000 SC6 production per annum, or with the knowledge of a bigger resource and imminent resource update statement, will the DFS be based on a bigger production model? And if so, is there any idea of what you think this could be?
I can't give you an idea of what I think it will be, other than to say I think it's going to be significantly bigger. You know, I mentioned earlier that the flotation side of spodumene only has this theoretical capacity of 40 ton an hour of dry solid material and a 30% mass pull. Now, if we're going to pull 12 tons an hour of spodumene out of that and only have a 75% availability, we'll probably have higher. That translates into a hell of a lot more than 50,000 tons per annum. So the theoretical level that the pilot plant in inverted commas can get to is at least 50% more than we've been talking about. And that's pretty close to where the original DFS number was. So I think that from a DFS perspective, I think it's going to be looking at something significantly bigger. The other point I want to make is that there are aspects of what we are doing now with the pilot plant that are actually to DFS standard. And a good example of that is the open pit and the pit management, where things like the geotechnical work that's been done is actually to a DFS standard. I think that the moment the plant produces spodumene, that in itself will accommodate better than what you normally put into a DFS. So I think that there's a lot of acceleration, as it were, that will come from the pilot plant, from a mining perspective and from a processing perspective, from a sales and shipment perspective. That all goes to strongly support any DFS that we choose to do after this.
Excellent. Well, thank you, George. So I'm going to see if any questions have been submitted live. I am told that there are a few. So I'm hoping that we can bring them up on the screen so I can read them out to you. Here we go. It's the first one from Jack. Will you run the plant 24/7?
The flotation circuit must run 24/7, but it also needs to shut down periodically for inspection and maintenance. So the forecast minimum availability on the flotation section is at between 75 and 80%, that would translate into 22 days continuous running, 24/7 per month. That's the forecast. I must tell you that my people at site are talking about achieving more than that. I don't want to go there at the moment. So at 75% availability on that, I think that we should be very comfortable and should be able to hit that.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So we have some other questions. Can we have a Russ, please? That's a resource upgrade statement, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. I look, a hell of a lot more assay results have come in. A lot more is known on a continuous basis of the actual geological model. We are using an independent company. The company we're using is Shango Resources to assist us with this. And I am chasing them at the moment. They have enough information at the moment to be able to give me some pretty significant updates. The main purpose, let me just emphasize that the main purpose of the very intense and close space drilling we did was to adequately identify the areas to be mined right now. In other words, to pull in within the South Pit area and to a limited part of the North Pit, to pull in as much of that into an indicated and possibly measured category to allow us to adequately and successfully and profitably go about mining it. So a lot of pressure on Shango at the moment. I'm expecting something at any moment from them, and I can then start formulating this and putting it into something to release.
Okay, good. Well, I'm sure people will be very pleased to get that. So a question here from Tony. George, are you likely to get a second plant with the other plant, with the other part of offtake deal?
What I would like to do, and I think the answer to that is yes. What I would like to do is just to say that with this plant that we are running now, there are two byproduct streams. The first is that any material that is sized below a 5 millimeter fraction from the main crushers is being stockpiled. That is expected to be around about 30 to 40 tons an hour of material. Now that contains grade. That was not going to be processed immediately. And the second stockpile will come from the secondary UV sorters, which are not installed yet, but will be installed fairly soon. And that is likely to be pegmatite material that may contain or should contain tantalum and should contain lepidolite. Now, those two streams were going to be stockpiled. It is completely logical that the first addition to this plant should be that those are managed and processed. And theoretically, that should be fairly quick and fairly cost effective. Bearing in mind, we already have electricity, we already have water, we already have tailings facilities, we already have trained people, we already have an area prepared that we can put the additional plant and so on into. There are a huge number of benefits that flow from the fact that there is an existing plant that is sitting there. So the answer to that is almost certainly yes, or at least being able to process additional material.
Okay, thank you for that, George. So how is the SC6 that's produced get assayed? Does it get checked on site or does it get third-party assayed? Just assessing if there is any delay in shipment.
There shouldn't be. The plant itself has automatic samplers at various stages. So the spodumene flotation material that goes to the filter presses passes through a sampler, and that sampler will be extracting material on a regular basis. At site, we have a full-blown laboratory which is being assembled at the moment. SGS has provided this It's got full analytical sample preparation. I mean, it is as good as a full-blown laboratory, as close as that as you can get. So at site, we will have the ability to produce proper inspection assay reports. We will have a representative of the inspectorate that we'll be using, who will be checking on the bagging and packing at site, and we will have a representative of MMCZ at site. So as these bags are packed, they will be identified. We'll know the batch they're from. We'll be able to have the assays within a matter of hours and the inspection done and so on. So no, there is no anticipation of a delay based on having to inspect or assay before we can export.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. The market would value some valuation numbers of what the pilot mine is likely to achieve. Can any be published?
Well, I've gone through that, and I've said I'm a little reluctant to really come out with direct guidance until I actually see this thing operate and work. I've given an indication of the design parameters. That's pretty well out there. I think we've said it before what they are. We know what the front end feed is. We anticipate an average grade coming out of the pit of a little over 1%. We know what the flotation circuit can manage. We know what its capacities are. So that's pretty well out there at the moment. But until such time as I actually see spodumene produced and actually am able to validate based on our own sampling and assay work, which will be intense and ongoing, I don't want to come out with any direct guidance, but I will do as soon as I can.
I'm sure you will, George, because people will be very keen to see that. Of course, my plan is to, once you are producing, to actually go on site and cover some of the production, and I'm sure we can get into deep discussions then. So when that is appropriate, that is the plan, to come and visit you, and if we can do a satellite link, even better. But I have a couple more questions to put to you here. So sure. Brendan here, Mr. Roach, you advised previously that the mining permit will be awarded for the EPO area straight after production start. Is this still the case?
Well, it hasn't been awarded, but the answer is yes. The area has been designated. The application, I believe, is in. Brendan is dealing with that. And I've got no reason to expect that anything has changed in terms of that. Okay, excellent.
Okay, so I'm not sure if there's any other questions coming in live. I did have another one that was sent to me, and it was regarding sort of staking claims in Zimbabwe for lithium. Is the company looking at any further land grabs?
Well, you know, first of all, we've got a 20,000 hectare EPO. And I have to tell you that the more we look in this EPO, the better the indications are that there's a hell of a lot more. To the east of Zulu, there is highly prospective ground. On the eastern border of our EPO, there are other known pegmatites. In the southern area of our EPO, there is this deep purple and various other known pegmatites. So within our own area, we have a lot more to find. That's the one. The other that is not getting a lot of attention is that we do have, and it's in a 50-50 at the moment, joint venture with LI3, we do have significant claims in the Mutare area. And those claims surround the Sabi Star mine that is under construction at the moment. There's exploration activities are starting on that. I'm keen that the LI3 people must take a management role in that. And they have recently appointed a new CEO of that company. They've appointed a gent who I know very well and have a lot of respect for, a man by the name of Francois Claire. He's based out of, I think he's out of Montreal. I can't remember, he's one of those. And Francois is a very, very experienced geo. And I'm looking for him to really run that and drive that. I think that there's significant value there. There's between 15 and 1,800 hectares of claims, and the claims are smack bang in the middle of the Matari Greenstone Belt. Lots and lots and lots of pegmatites. Already some illegal activity on some of the claims for looking to do direct ore shipments, unprocessed ore shipments, which are really banned, but people are still looking to do it. So I'm pretty excited about that. So there is more in Zimbabwe. But to be frank, Zulu in itself is a huge play.
Excellent. Well, I know I've been told there's at least a couple more questions that have come in. Do you anticipate any load shedding issues, and what impact do you anticipate with a weakening ZAR?
Well, I don't, except it might get cheaper living in South Africa. I don't know. Relatively speaking, that is. No, not in Zimbabwe. I mean, we're our own power producer. I have very strong interest from various people wanting to establish solar power, wanting to look to link solar to the Zimbabwean grid. The time frame within which we established Zulu indicated that the only alternative we had was diesel generation. And I think that was the right thing. And I think that there's going to be solar, there's going to be grid link. These are all going to come, and all of that's going to be for the benefit of Zulu. In terms of the South African situation and the power, frankly, if you want a personal view, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Okay.
For what it is worth, anyway.
Indeed. Okay, David here, I know he's a big Prem investor. He has a question. Have the Zimbabwe government been to Zulu to see the progress on a frequent basis? They must be delighted.
Well, I think they are, and when you talk to them, they are. I do believe that the president intends to visit the mine and to attend an opening ceremony. The Minister of Mines similarly has indicated that he wishes to attend and visit. Many of the local political people within the local areas are all known to us and have all visited. The local chief within the area is busy doing a special opening ceremony for us. I think it's this weekend. So yeah, there are a lot of people very pleased with it.
Good, excellent. Well, I'm going to see if there's any more questions that came in live there. We may have covered everything. Someone asking, has the dam been finished? Seen pictures on Twitter. It looked good. I think we did speak about that earlier, George, didn't we? That's all completed.
No, the dam has still got a way to go. That dam is probably at about 10, 11 meters of water inside it. It stretches back 2 kilometers. It's a huge water body already, but it's still got another 4 to 5 or 6 meters to go. It's going to be spectacular.
I'm sure it is. Okay, excellent. Well, I think that concludes all of the questions that were sent in live there. Lots of people I've noticed, saying thank you, George, for the work. Very impressed with the progress there. I've seen comments coming in, so it's very good to get that feedback. So I think we're all good, and we're on time now to bring our other guests back in just to have our round table discussion. So I'll bring back Cedric Simonet and Jason Brewer there as well. So this is the time when we're going to have a bit of a round table discussion on mining in Africa and battery metals. And the first thing I want to discuss is the increasing demand for energy metals and the importance in powering the green economy. So Cedric, I mean, what are you seeing from the rare earth side of things? I mean, we're now hearing rare earths on the lips of political leaders. Even the man on the street is getting to know these words. So what are you seeing in terms of demand for these metals? Well, not metals, but commodities going forward? And I think you are muted, Cedric.
Sorry about that. Thank you. All right. So I think the first thing I would like to comment is that I think it's important to make a point of explaining the difference between battery metals and rare earth elements, because rare earth elements are not battery metals, although they also are energy metals. So rare earth elements, the four magnet metals that we talked about previously are used to make permanent magnets. These permanent magnets are used to build wind turbines, and they are used to build drivetrains, motors, electric motors for electric vehicles. Battery metals obviously are used to produce batteries. So you need the rare earths to produce green electricity and to turn this electricity into motion. And right in the middle, you need the battery metals to store the electricity. Having said that, what we see in terms of the consumption forecasts for permanent magnets and therefore for neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, and terbium, it's just going up and up and up. For example, to meet its 40% renewable energy targets, the European Union must install 32 gigawatts of wind power per year. That's already 6,400 tons of neodymium per year. To fulfill its requirements in terms of replacing internal combustion engine vehicles by electric vehicles, the European Union will need, over the next 30 years, to produce 20 million vehicles per year. That's 60,000 tons of neodymium per year. So already there is a deficit. And the projection is that to keep the global temperature increase within the 1.5 degrees range by 2050, the amount of rare earths that will need to be produced is about 10 times what the current global supply is. So the prices are going nowhere down. The consumption is just going up and up and up.
Indeed. Jason, are you seeing a similar thing? Of course, graphite, you have your ear to the ground to copper and, of course, lithium, all used in the green economy.
Yeah, I think the analysts out there for the various investment banks are having a tremendous amount of fun coming out, and they're constantly revising both their price targets, I guess, but also, the supply crunch, the shortfalls, and so on. I mean, even this year, I think lithium demand is what's forecast to increase about 27-30%, to about 900,000 tons. It's incredible when you look how this market has changed for lithium. And I'm sorry, George, if I'm talking about lithium and so on. I'll talk a bit about graphite. But, it's only 15 odd years ago that the biggest market for lithium was glass and ceramics. And it was only, I think, maybe 5 years ago that the battery sector became the biggest area for lithium consumption. So it's only in these past several years now that you've seen this rapid growth because of the adoption of electric vehicles and so on. And that does not seem to show any sign of slowing down. And we've all seen the analysts coming out and saying we need this many new lithium mines, cobalt mines, copper mines, graphite mines in the next 5 to 20 years to get close to meeting demand. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Mines cannot be built that quickly. So, and you look in Africa in particular, mines take time because there has been this perception of higher risk and so on. But with the demand now, which isn't stopping, and price impact isn't slowing down, this is really going to have a major impact in the short, medium, and long term for all of these battery metals.
Indeed. Well, George, let me get your thoughts on this. Of course, you're much further down the track, aren't you, on this?
Look, let me just make a general comment that we took a view at Zulu, and this doesn't necessarily only apply to spodumene. It does in this instance, but we took a view that the shortage was likely to persist for a period. It's not forever, but it'll persist, I think, through the rest of this year and well into next. And that shortage was sufficient to sustain a price that would allow us to mitigate the risks that we would be taking by avoiding completing a full-blown DFS. and going with a plant that originally started out as a pilot modular plant, but it's much bigger than that. But going with a plant that had flexibility in it to accommodate some of the issues that we may have to change that may have been overlooked because we didn't do a complete DFS. So the view was, do we have money? Yes, we have access to money. We had we issued an invoice and we got paid. That's what it comes down to. It's a genuine prepayment. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that we are sufficiently comfortable with the price structures at the moment to be able to absorb elevated production costs that we may face because of something we didn't deal with in the DFS. So it was a risk mitigation situation, and that allowed us to accelerate into production. Now, I don't know whether this is a model that a lot of other people are going to be able to follow or will, but I think there are some commodities where this is going to happen. And I think that in the African context, and with some of the specialist commodities and some of the stuff that we've been talking about here, some of this, that opportunity exists. The problem, I'll stop talking in a moment, but the problem is that so often by the time you've gone through a full protracted DFS and then a conventional funding and financing process and so on, that fundamentals have changed in the marketplace, new technologies emerged, something else has happened, and the whole thing has changed. So this is the risk-reward scenario that you sit and are faced with. And that, I'm not trying to find a panacea or something like that. I'm just simply saying that we took advantage of it. I think there are opportunities for doing it. And I think that the African theatre should lend itself to this kind of thing more and more.
Cedric, do you echo George's thoughts there? I know you've had experience of bringing mines into production before.
Oops. Sorry, I didn't hear the question well.
Oh, sorry. I said, do you echo George's thoughts there? No, because you've had experience bringing mines into production before, going through all these hurdles you have to go through.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially about the timelines for studies. And I think it's important to look for alternative timelines to try to fast track things. And George has given a very good description of this. This is also what we are doing with Monte Muambe. Yeah, so I totally agree with that. And only small companies can do this.
And well, Jason, Jason's the man for fast tracking, aren't you, Jason?
Look, I think as junior companies, more dynamic, a management team that's perhaps a little bit more passionate about what they do, and probably a management team or a board of directors that's got more skin in the game. That's what you tend to see with companies, and where you're more focused on actually delivering. It's for all of us here, as I'm sure it's more than just a salary. You're here to achieve something, and junior companies just seem to have that capability of moving quicker. Probably taking a bit more of a risk, or trying to understand risk a bit better, I think. And they have an ability to move forward faster because their decision making has to be, because we're working in a very competitive environment, and we do need to move quickly. More so in today's equity markets, where investors have got so many choices about where to put their money. So you've actually got to deliver for them, and in far shorter timeframes than traditionally has been in place in the past 10, 20 years in the mining sector.
Well, Cedric said there about this is only something that small mining companies can do. Would you agree with that there's a distinct advantage to being a small mining company, that you're able to be more agile and achieve some of these things that the bigger boys just can't? Jason.
Oh, was that for me? I thought it was for Cedric, that question.
Well, I was picking up on what Cedric said, but
No, you have to be. Sorry, you mentioned Cedric's name. I just assumed your question was for him. No, you have to be. You have to be. You can't sit still. For the majority of junior companies out there, you've got to know where the next dollar is coming from, because most of them haven't got a cash flow. So you need to know how you're going to secure that next level of investment. And to do that, you've got to move quick. You've got to adapt to a changing environment, and you've got to adapt to the markets and what they require. And fundamentally, first and foremost, you've got to deliver. And, it's pleasing to see the rest of the panel here actually delivering on things. So, you don't typically get that. So it's great to see.
Indeed. Cedric, what are your thoughts on this, the unique advantages that small mining companies have? I'll come to George in a minute, who is a companies probably moving away from that small mining company criteria.
Right. I think in just a few words, the key is boots on the ground. The large companies, when they are fishing for projects to develop, they tend to look for large deposits which have already been documented. Maybe there is some legacy drilling with tens of thousands of meters drilled. But the fact is that there are lots of undiscovered mineral deposits in Africa. And if we look at rare earths, for example, ionic clay is a very new concept. Nobody has looked for it yet. There are only a few known deposits in Africa, and there is a lot of potential. So you can't find these new gems without being on the ground and without developing local knowledge. You can't also run a project in Africa without being there, meeting the government, the administration, the community, if possible, speaking their language. People just want to see your face. They want to hear your voice. They want to share a cup of tea with you, a roasted goat. They want to roast a goat for you. And they want you to understand them. So you have to be there. So in short, we often say you have to be nimble enough. I would say also sometimes you have to be humble enough, and only small mining companies can do that.
Okay. George, what are your thoughts? Of course, you've been a small mining company for many, many years, but you're moving swiftly away from that now.
Yeah, maybe, but the fundamentals of integration into communities, understanding and dealing with local governments and expectations and so on won't change and can't change. And you just can't work in Africa unless that's where you're going to go. I think Mozambique is a classic example. If you're running around in that country, I've got lots of interests in there as well. That's just what it is. So I don't know. Maybe we're sitting with a bigger market cap. Maybe we're moving into a point where we're a revenue-producing company and hopefully dividend-paying and so on in short order. But there are fundamentals that won't change. I certainly won't change in terms of the way I go about trying to secure projects. I do them personally. I always have. I travel extensively into wherever we're going. And to the extent that I continue working in it, I'm not going to change that. So, yeah, I think that's just where it is in Africa.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think, Cedric, you made a point there. If you're going to run a company, a project here, you can't do it remotely. You can't do it in your fancy office in the city or in Mayfair. You've actually got to be on the ground, and it's great seeing George out there. I think, Cedric, you're just down the road from here in Nairobi. You've got 3 people here that are on the ground doing things, and that's really a key advantage for a lot of companies. If you've got a management team that are willing to get their hands dirty and get out there and do it and be on the ground and be able to talk about it, not talk about it from a report they get from their local country manager, but talk about it with passion and with the heart, because they've actually lived it, and that's something you only really get here in Africa. You only really get that.
Interesting, the African spirit, maybe. Well, I do want to talk a little bit more about Africa, because, of course, that's where you all are at the moment physically, and that's where your projects are. And I want to talk really about how you feel about the potential for Africa to become a key supplier of energy metals to meet the global demand, and how potential partnerships between both small and large mining companies to share knowledge, resources, and technology to create sustainable and responsible mining operations. So, Cedric, let me come to you first on that. What are your thoughts on Africa as being the a place to do business in future for mining, and how you can work with partners to go down this green economy shift route.
Right. I think Africa has got two main advantages when it comes to energy minerals and to the green revolution. First, it has the minerals, which is obvious, but it's very important. And second, in Africa, there are regulatory frameworks which are modern, but which are flexible enough to allow projects to happen. In Europe, it's a lot more difficult. We have looked into it. We have looked at doing rare earth projects in the UK, in France, and it's just not possible. In Africa, it is possible. But there's one important point to me that people often miss. African countries nowadays are tired to see their minerals exported in the form of concentrate. So I think the real opportunity to build value, not only for shareholders, but for all stakeholders and for the country, is through in-country value addition as much as possible. Sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it is possible, and it can add value to our shareholders. So the starting point is just to make the effort of looking into it, of trying. This is how sustainability can be built. There is another point I would like to make. Energy minerals, something which I am seeing. Energy minerals are already an important part of our life. And it's just a matter of time before consumers start demanding guarantees that the minerals we produce have been extracted in the respect of communities and of the environment, like it has been previously for coltan, like it has been for diamonds. So energy mineral producers, I am convinced, will very soon have to conform to ethical mining standards. They will need to be certified to keep their social license to operate. And this is something that I don't hear too much about for battery minerals and rare earth companies, but it's something which is coming, and we have to be ready. We have to start working on it proactively through our industry associations. And I think this is something which is very important.
Okay, Jason, what are your thoughts there? I know you're very keen on Africa, but you're also very good at working with local partners, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't know what more you can add after Cedric's comments there. He summed it all up very well. No, you've got to. There's tremendous projects here for commodities that have largely not been explored for in a number of these regions, and that's a great opportunity in itself. To do that, you do need, and to touch on Cedric's comments there about your social license and so on, you've got to work with strong local partners, reputable partners, but you've got to work with a government that's actually got those frameworks, those incentives, the desire to actually grow their economy in the mineral sector. And the mineral sector in many developing countries, it's well past its peak. Let's be honest. It's well past its peak. So Africa still has, various countries throughout Africa still have some incredible projects. You've seen on the lithium side, you've seen what Zimbabwe's got. You look at the DRC up at Manono. You look at some of the stuff up in West Africa. Projects there, which if those were in Europe, they would have been developed, I would hope relatively quickly. But these assets here in Africa are ones which require cooperation at all levels. If you've got great local partners, that's great. But if you haven't got that ability all the way through government, where they get behind your project, they do, as George was saying there, you get the Prime Minister, the President coming to see you, you've got the Mines Minister coming, because they're actually proud of it. They're proud of how these projects are developing, and they can actually see the impact that it's having immediately on communities, on infrastructure, the most basic of infrastructure, which we all take for granted back in Europe, road, water, power. Typically when you get projects, and some of the scale of projects which we're all looking at here, the impact that has on some of these remote communities is massive. And for that part, that's where I see, African countries, the governments, the ministries, they're very conducive for investment. They want that. And, there is this big push, obviously, in these energy metals, battery metal sector. And And I think that's not going to slow down. That's not going to slow down. We're seeing it throughout East and Southern Africa. The interest from investors, the interest from companies is growing.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. I know you're very keen on the community as well, aren't you? I see a lot of the work that you're doing there in the local community. So clearly that's a very important thing to you as well for running a business down in
I think for all of us here that live and work here, it's, you know, it's not a community, it's home. You know, so you've got to do, when you're here, you've got to do what you do in your home. You're doing it with your neighbors. You're working with your immediate communities. So yeah, it's we're not going overseas to do a project where you naturally seem to adopt a different approach. We're doing it in our backyards here, and you tend to, I think, just it's human nature. You just do things in a different way, in a more responsible way, because you know you've got to get up in the morning and go and grab a coffee down the road. You've got to drive your car here. You've got to fill it up. You've got more. It's a more personable thing.
Mm-hmm. George, I'll give you the sort of the final thoughts on this segment. What are your thoughts listening to both Jason and Cedric there?
I've expressed some of them before. The development of value-added situations in country is essential. The problem is that the European sphere, North American sphere, and so on, and I take Zimbabwe as an example. It's not the only one. Mozambique is similar. South Africa's got the same, and so on. But Zimbabwe in particular, this team would rather make their investment conditional upon some kind of political or other change, and try and impose something else instead of taking a view that the investment is an investment to allow them to secure access to essential, in this case, spodumene or lithium-based, whatever it might be. So you sit in a bit of a problematic situation where, and again, I take Zimbabwe. Chinese investment has virtually taken over very nearly the entire major components of spodumene exploration and development in Zimbabwe. I think Prem is an exception at Zulu and at Mutare. I think those are two exceptions. Otherwise, there ain't too many exceptions in Zimbabwe at the moment. Now, I have many conversations and many approaches from political scenarios in Europe. And my commentary to all of them is it's a huge opportunity for you guys to do something in country. Come and invest in country, invest in a lithium sulfate plant or whatever the hell it may be, which is probably the best one to look at doing there. Go and do it. You'd be welcome. You'd get more by doing that than sitting down and saying, hey, I want to build these value-added things in my own country and just treat us like another colonial, whatever it might be, and get the concentrate and take it out. And or say, well, I'll come and invest, but only if you change politically or whatever it may be. So I think that there's a whole nother scenario happening in the background that needs to be attended to. You know, I'm sorry, I'm moving away a little bit from what we can do directly ourselves, but I think it's important that at some point in time, the overall global importance of what's happening in Zimbabwe, particularly with lithium, and in some of the other African countries that are going to follow, I think that it's important that some of this is looked at and appreciated.
Okay, well, thank you for your thoughts, George. Jason or Cedric, do you have any final things to say, or are we?
Yeah, maybe just one word which seemed to arise from what all three of us said is passion. It's a word that Jason loves to use, and that's really what I can feel in each of us.
Absolutely. No, you can definitely feel the passion. Well, thank you all very much for joining us tonight. You're all calling in from Africa. I know it's late where you are, so thank you very much for joining us. Of course, Jason from Marula Mining, Cedric from Altona, rare earths. And George joining us via satellite. Very, very appreciative that you did that, George, for us today from Premier African Minerals. And thank you very much, everyone watching. It's been a record live stream for StockBox. Thank you all very much for watching this evening. And until next time, everyone, take care and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Yes.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.